from around the world. And from CBS News in Cape Canaveral, Florida, this is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather and Bob Schieffer in our newsroom in New York.
Good evening from Launch Pad 39A. A smoothly running countdown for the second attempt to send the Space Shuttle Columbia back into orbit tomorrow morning hit a couple of snags here at Kennedy Space Center. One still is unresolved. I'll be back later in this broadcast with details. Right now, Bob Schieffer in New York has the rest of the day's news.
Dan, after some rocky going last week on foreign policy, the administration had a new public relations problem tonight on the domestic front, explaining what Budget Director David Stockman meant when he told an Atlantic Monthly interviewer that the initial aim of the administration's budget cuts was to aid the rich. Leslie Stahl has today's developments at the White House.
White House officials in a meeting here last night talked about whether Stockman might have to be replaced. However, according to sources at the meeting, the immediate instinct was to rally around the budget director to help him ride out the storm. And indeed, officials here today were under strict orders to have no comment in hopes that their silence somehow may make the story vanish. However, Democrats on Capitol Hill were doing their part to see that didn't happen.
Members of the Congress are certainly going to be less likely to accept whatever figures he offers us from now on. And the President, who has been relying on David Stockman, is going to find it harder to persuade members of the House and Senate of both parties to go along with him.
I'm glad, at least from what I've heard of the article, that at least somebody in the administration is starting to realize that they're moving in the wrong direction.
Republican Robert Dole took the line that the article might actually help Stockman.
I think he may have gained some credibility. I think people like a bit of candor in this city.
Meanwhile, supply-side economists at the Treasury Department disputed Stockman's conclusions that their theory is a Trojan horse favoring the rich.
It is not a Trojan horse. It's based on the careful experiment of all mankind.
Can Stockman survive this?
Oh, certainly. He has done a marvelous job, an absolutely critical job of helping get government spending under control.
A White House official said that while Stockman may survive, he has been, quote, mortally wounded as a salesman on Capitol Hill. Can you imagine, he said, what will happen the next time he goes to Congress with some new budget figures? They'll ask him if these are just some more that he made up. Stockman, meanwhile, has telephoned key members of the administration to apologize. Unavailable for comment today, Stockman was said to be busy working on the budget. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
Several Republican members of the Senate Budget Committee met informally today, and according to correspondent Phil Jones, they appeared to be headed toward a direct challenge to what President Reagan wants on budgetary matters. Jones reports they are now moving toward adoption of a resolution calling for $160 billion in new budget cuts and tax increases over the next 3 years, something the president does not want at this time. At Groton, Connecticut today, the $1.5 billion USS Ohio was commissioned into the Navy. The Ohio is the first of the Trident-class nuclear submarines and is colossal in many ways. It's the largest and most powerful submarine ever built. Because of cost overruns, it is the most expensive, and because of construction delays, it has taken the longest to build, 7 years. Today's ceremonies mark the beginning of one Navy era, that of the super sub, and possibly the end of another, that of the father of the nuclear submarine, Admiral Hyman Rickover. Ike Pappas reports.
Rickover and the man who is now seeking to end his 60-year career, Navy Secretary John Lehman, shook hands today but said little to each other. Rickover is expected to once again call on his powerful friends in Congress to override Lehman's decision to retire the 81-year-old admiral. Rickover's remarks today, in fact, amounted to anything but a farewell address.
I was on board the Ohio during her first sea trial. I can therefore affirm that no enemy can feel other than fear and terror with this ship at sea.
The Trident, as long as 2 football fields, will carry 24 intercontinental ballistic missiles, each packing 8 nuclear warheads that could strike nearly 200 separate targets up to 5,000 miles away. Along with the dignitaries, the protesters showed up today on land outside the shipyard, in the air over the ceremonies, and on the Thames River. But no more than 200 nuclear demonstrators were on hand, far fewer than the hundreds of thousands that have poured out in Europe to accuse the United States of planning nuclear war, protests that Vice President Bush today answered.
It's a great and sad irony that it was the U.S. that helped regain the freedom of that same soil on which those charges were recently made. The ship that we commissioned today represents our dedication to ensuring that such a conflict never again be necessary.
The Navy wants to build 29 Tridents through the remainder of the decade, but given the construction problems and the cost overruns of this first one, there are serious doubts that the goal will ever be achieved. Ike Pappas, CBS News, Groton, Connecticut.
Lectures, music, and puppet shows dramatizing the horror of nuclear war dotted the nation's campuses and teach-ins today, aimed at increasing public support for arms control. The Union of Concerned Scientists estimated that there were activities scheduled on 147 campuses. And a new medical report says that although 60 million Americans would survive an all-out nuclear barrage, they might face epidemics spread in part by trillions of insects. The report in tomorrow's New England Journal of Medicine says up to a quarter of the survivors might die from contagious diseases, including the plague. The report was prepared by Dr. Herbert L. Abrams, a radiology professor at Harvard Medical School. He drew on 38 published studies. Spokesman said the timing of the report and today's convocations on the threat of nuclear war were sheer coincidence. Dr. Abrams said the purpose of publishing this report was to educate doctors. It had no political purpose. A little girl hospitalized in Cedar Rapids, Iowa is getting a lot of attention today because of charges made by President Reagan at his news conference yesterday. Charges that both the child and taxpayers were being shortchanged because of Medicaid regulations. Bob McNamara has our report on that.
We just recently received word of a little girl who has spent most of her life in a hospital. The doctors are of the opinion that if she could be sent home, it would be better for her.
Katie Beckett is that little girl, and for nearly 3 of her 3.5 years, she's lived in a Cedar Rapids, Iowa hospital with her Muppets, her nurses, and games. Stricken with viral encephalitis, an often fatal disease that attacks the lining of the brain, the spinal cord, and respiratory system, Katie's made a remarkable recovery.
3 years ago, she was totally paralyzed. Arms, legs, and all. She's recovered almost all of that.
She's ready to come home. She is.
But Mark and Julie Beckett can't take Katie home, even though doctors say she'd be better off there.
Now, by what sense do we have a regulation in government that says we'll pay $6,000 a month to keep someone in a hospital that we believe would be better off at home, but the family cannot afford 1/6 of that amount to keep them at home?
The president's numbers were wrong. Katie's actual hospital bills are $10,000 to $12,000 a month. Those bills paid by Medicaid since her health insurance ran out. But Medicaid says even if Katie went home to the care of her parents, even if costs were $8,000 to $10,000 a month cheaper at home, Medicaid will not pay bills outside the hospital.
We're not fighting the government. We're just trying to get a glitch out of the system.
The Becketts and their congressman have been told by the Department of Health and Human Services there are no exceptions. But that was before President Reagan got on the case. And for Katie's sake, her parents now hope she'll be going home soon. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Cedar Rapids.
In Colombia, every night new coffee beans ripen. And for Juan Valdez, every day is a day of harvest. A day to pick by hand only those coffee beans which have become ready. At the end of each day, Juan leaves the fields and prepares to harvest again. For in Colombia, they know that the richest coffee in the world never rests.
He was the kind of a guy who didn't expect much from today's small cars, just practicality, nothing more. Then he saw the 1982 Oldsmobile Omega and realized he'd been expecting too little. This 4-cylinder front-wheel drive Olds Omega had style. He could imagine the luxury inside, the smooth, quiet ride. Olds Omega, he smiled. Even today, there's still room to do it with style.
Here at the windswept Kennedy Space Center, 2 problems snagged the trouble-free countdown for Columbia's second launch, already delayed 3 times. a leaky valve attached to the shuttle's external fuel tank, already corrected, and a problem with a black box in the ship's data processing system had technicians scrambling. NASA officials remain optimistic. Launch still scheduled for 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow.
The main continuing problem is the data processing system, part of Columbia's intricate communications operation. The device receives and organizes data about the shuttle's activities for eventual transmission to Houston. It's not a life-threatening problem, but after replacing the unit, the glitch remains unsolved. NASA engineers, concerned the new unit may also have to be replaced, now have taken two identical black boxes from the next shuttle. They may use one of those on Columbia, and there's even talk of carrying a spare one on board, which could be plugged in by the crew if a failure comes during flight. The good news, the weather, which looks fine for tomorrow. While experts worked on the snags, Columbia's commander, Joe Engel, and pilot Dick Truly practiced emergency landing runs in case tomorrow's launch goes awry and the crew is forced to return here.
That's good. You ready for tomorrow? Sure am. Ready to go. Be sure you got film in those things tomorrow morning, boy. You're going to need it.
Today's problems come on the heels of last week's scrub at 31 seconds before launch. Not because of the then expected rain, but because of technical problems not in the forecast. Estimated cost for the delay, $1.5 to $2 million. Data system problems, fuel tank pressure leak, clogged oil filters, fears of rain. With all these difficulties, will the shuttle ever know regular service? NASA still thinks so.
We'll keep learning, we'll keep developing confidence, and we'll work the learning curve much as one does in manufacturing and airlines in reducing the time of turnaround and improving the cost effectiveness.
Well, in a late development tonight, Space Agency officials now are aiming for a 10 a.m. Eastern Time launch tomorrow morning. This delay is to allow for a replacement black box cannibalized from the sister shuttle Challenger to be flown from California, installed and tested. A spokesman says this is expected to be completed about 1 a.m. Eastern Time. If so, the countdown could resume about 3:40 a.m. Thus, if all goes well, this will be the second of 4 test flights for Columbia, leading to regular flight operations in late 1982. All part of America's role in a new kind of space race. I'll be back with a look at that later in the broadcast.
Ooh. Ah. Got tough congestion. Sinex is the long-acting nasal spray that can give you a second of and 10 hours of instantly. Medicated Vicks vapors penetrate your nose with a powerful feeling of relief. Ooh. And Sinex decongesting medicine shrinks swollen nasal membrane so air can flow through. You breathe free up to 10 full hours. Ah. For tough congestion, get the Sinex extra feeling of relief. A second of 10 hours of... Ah.
Why did Betty Manning stop using her cream denture adhesive?
It would ooze out the side.
We asked her to try the natural powder adhesive, Fast Teeth Powder. It sprays on a smooth, even layer.
I don't notice that the Fast Teeth is there. It makes your dentures feel more like they're in like regular teeth. There's a word here, natural feeling. That's what it feels like, and it gives you confidence. That's all I can say about it.
Fast Teeth Powder makes dentures feel more like your own teeth.
It just gives me a good feeling.
Mobil Corporation, the oil giant, met with more opposition today in its attempt to take over Marathon Oil Company. Marathon wants no part of the merger, and today 3 senators, Danforth of Missouri, Packwood of Oregon, and Ford of Kentucky, demanded that the Federal Trade Commission investigate Mobil's takeover attempt. And in Findlay, Ohio, opponents of the takeover were literally on parade. Ray Brady reports.
The marching in Findlay, Ohio today was for a company, the one known here as the Big Red M, Marathon Oil. It started in Findlay 94 years ago and today employs 1 in 10 of its working people. Mobil Oil, not headquartered here but far away in New York City, is trying to buy Marathon. So Findlay's people put out symbols because they worry Mobil could take them, their town, and their company hostage. On the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, an epic battle for Marathon is shaping up. analysts say Mobil wants Marathon's rich oil fields in the politically safe U.S., and Mobil may spend as much as $5 billion to get them.
Mobil has earned enormous profits from the decontrol of oil and from higher OPEC prices. Instead of using all that money to go out and find new oil reserves in the United States and produce those oil reserves, it is using that money to buy up a competitor with known oil reserves.
So in the courts, Marathon is fighting back, and it could try to merge with another oil company to make itself too big for Mobil to get.
Just when the public was beginning to get a better understanding of the oil industry economics, Mobil, with its high-handed arrogance, seems to be trying to set back the public attitudes to the days of the Standard Oil Trust.
Mobil Vice President Herbert Schmertz today repeated his company's stance.
I really don't think I want to comment on the Marathon situation.
The Federal Trade Commission has been asked to review the situation. At the filling stations, they fear oil company mergers could mean higher prices. And in Findlay, Ohio, the people there worry that in this battle for billions, it may be their town that ends up paying the most. Ray Brady, CBS News, New York.
In cities and small towns across the country today, ceremonies honored the men and women who fought in the nation's wars from Concord to Saigon. Special attention was paid to the more than 9 million veterans who returned from Vietnam. But at Arlington National Cemetery, as Jim McManus reports now, there were poignant echoes of another war.
On November 11th, 1921, a young New York congressman, author of a resolution to honor a soldier known but to God, from the war to end all wars, placed the first wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Now 93 years old, former Congressman Hamilton Fish joined Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger in remembering all that sacrifice and more. The intervening 60 years have produced 3 more wars and 500,000 more dead.
If there is any country worth living in, any country worth defending, any country worth fighting for, or any country worth dying for, it is the United States of America. God bless America.
Finally, the National Commander of the Legion of Valor noted that veterans will be retelling their war stories today, and he offered this prayer.
Listen well, for with the grace of God, there will be no new stories to tell.
You know how I define old? It's someone that's so set in their ways, they just won't change. They can't change. The big change that I made in my life recently was when I was given Tylenol in the hospital after surgery. That was a whole new experience for me because I have been taking aspirin all my life, and now I've changed to Tylenol. That's what's worked wonderfully, and so that's what I continue to take. Well, I think probably the fact that it was recommended in the hospital caused me to change, and it worked so effectively that I never thought to change back. It turns out that Tylenol is the pain reliever that hospitals use most. Well, if hospitals can trust Tylenol, I know I sure can. So now if I have any aches or pains, Tylenol is the only thing I take.
For relief you can trust. Trust Tylenol. Hospitals do. Tylenol in regular and extra strength.
I feel you're never too old to change, especially when it's a change to something as good as Tylenol. That's why I'm glad I switched to something that not only works, but that I can really put my trust in.
Libya's radical regime is using many methods these days to acquire its military equipment and technological know-how to aid in its acknowledged export of revolution. One such method that recently came to light involves Edwin Wilson and Frank Turple, the former CIA employees who are under federal indictment for selling illegal explosives to Libya. Another method involves Libya's considerable oil wealth, as David Endelman tells us in the second part of his special report.
For 20 years, Telemet, a small electronics company in Munich, has been manufacturing sophisticated military electronics equipment, selling at least part of its output to the German army. It has a diverse line of products, all NATO standard and fully interchangeable with similar American equipment. In its 2 plants in Munich and Schönberg, the company makes handheld walkie-talkies and complex scrambler equipment. Some of this equipment, according to Telemit's own film, shown here, has been installed in Germany's new state-of-the-art Leopard tank, although the German Defense Ministry denies Telemit supplies anything more than spare parts. Recently, the company opened a joint venture in Istanbul, supplying similar electronics equipment to another NATO ally, Turkey. 5 years ago, however, the nature of the company changed. It passed out of the hands of its founder, Herbert Mittermeier, and into the hands of a Swiss corporation designed, its present owners admit, to conceal the true owners of Telemit's stock. In fact, CBS News has learned the true owner today is the government of Libya and its president, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. CBS News paid a visit to Telemit's Munich headquarters. No cameras were allowed inside, but in one room there were 9 Libyan students studying, in Arabic, how to service and operate sophisticated military communications equipment. Overlooking them on the wall, a color photograph of Libya's Colonel Gaddafi. Said their instructor, "Oh yes, the students love their president." Later, outside Telemit's facilities, CBS News filmed several of these students and Telemit workers and talked briefly with one of them. Are you a student or are you
I'm a student.
You're a student?
Yes.
What are you studying, if I could ask? Electronics.
Yeah.
Telemit officials admitted that they were supplying several Middle East countries with the same equipment they were selling to the German and Turkish armies. German Foreign Ministry officials said export licenses to Libya had been issued for Telemit equipment. But German Defense Ministry officials did not know of the Libyan students at Telemit. Efforts to contact former company officials and board members met with silence and expressions of fear. Said one former company director, a German, "Even if I could tell you anything, I won't. You must know the kind of people you are dealing with." American military officers in Europe privately expressed considerable concern upon learning of Telemit's ties. One American Army officer explained that while the designs are not heavily classified, there are 2 key reasons why some of this equipment should not fall into the hands of the Libyans or their close allies, the Soviets. It would make that much easier, the design of electronic countermeasures, and would allow the enemy to design better devices of their own, known as reverse engineering. But above all, the control of a company such as Telemit by Colonel Gaddafi would also afford the Libyan military access to designs of sophisticated electronics devices he has had to obtain illegally from the West, using people such as former CIA agent Edwin Wilson. There are West European businessmen and diplomats with extensive Mideast ties who suggest that Telemit is only one, albeit a key component of a high-tech military-industrial empire that Colonel Gaddafi has been quietly amassing with Libya's oil wealth. That military-industrial empire has been designed to assure Gaddafi of a stream of high-tech weaponry independent of any outside power. David Andelman, CBS News, Munich.
Doctors at Baylor College of Medicine reported today that large cancerous tumors in some cases have been shrunk dramatically by washing small amounts of the patient's blood with protein from a common bacteria. The doctors are not sure how the process works, but believe it activates a natural cancer defense system that exists in the blood of cancer victims. Dr. David Turman and his colleagues have used the technique on 5 victims of breast cancer. In 4 of the cases, tumors were reduced from 33 to 80%. Doctors caution the approach is still experimental, but say it may provide a new weapon against cancer.
Tonight's your anniversary.
That it is.
I see you're taking the Buick Skylark.
Indeed.
Very appropriate, rich styling, elegant interior.
Nothing but the best.
The Skylark seems to set a certain tone for the occasion.
Undoubtedly.
I gather that Skylark's economy also has its appeal.
It does, if you'd rather spend your money on better things than gasoline.
Buick Skylark, the best disguised economy car in America.
Wouldn't you really rather have a Buick?
Pardon me, sir. As a pizza expert, we'd like you to try something. Stouffer's French bread pizza.
French bread pizza?
Taste it.
That's good. Nice and crunchy.
Aha.
Must be the French bread. Very untraditional, but good. Cheese and pepperoni, terrific. Terrific.
Now there's another Stouffer's pizza. Mushroom. Try it.
24 years ago, the contest was against the Soviets, and the first rounds began here at Cape Canaveral. From these rusting launch pads, Americans were orbited into space. Last year, The Soviets had over 100 launches, the United States only 12. But the space race, at least the first leg of it, is over. Although Americans are again being launched into orbit, the aim is not so much to beat the Soviets. The space shuttle mission has moved America into new directions in a changing world, in a changing space. 6 moon landings brought the United States to space supremacy over the Soviets. National honor was preserved. More successes followed with Skylab, the first working space station, and with Viking, the first craft to get to Mars and send back pictures. All this gave the American space program the freedom to leave competition with the Soviets behind and chart new frontiers. The Soviets, too, were going in new directions. Despite their 100 launches last year, their problem has been making their equipment work and then making it last. They have been able to depend on only a few weeks' work from the satellite's delicate sensing and transmission equipment before it begins to fail. They have had to forego shuttle technology where they are weak and try instead for a space station, a platform carrying men and materials for long periods to service the failing Soviet payloads. But with an average of 2 launches a week, the Soviets have a flexible, aggressive, and persistent program that can easily be tailored to sudden changes in space policy, an important edge if space exploration turned to outright space hostility. After the moon landings, NASA chose the space shuttle because it brought easy access into and out of space with a cost-effective, reusable vehicle. The 2 superpowers are no longer alone in the skies. At last count, 2,743 payloads have been in orbit. Another 58 probes have been shot straight into deep space. 18 nations have had satellites in orbit. The Western European community has an active space project. China and Japan want one. The United States won the first space race. It's still the undisputed leader in the field. But the next round doesn't promise to be so clear-cut. Strategic conflicts with the Soviet Union, economic competition with Europe and Japan. Both are dictating a new direction to American space efforts. Tomorrow's planned launch will give another indication how the nation is moving to meet those new challenges. Our coverage of the launch of Space Shuttle 2 will begin at 6 Eastern Time tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock Central. Until then, Dan Rather reporting from Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Good night.
Rare whooping cranes spend the winter on the Aransas Peninsula in southern Texas, where Conoco produces oil and natural gas. For protecting the crane's habitat, we were the first company to receive the Citation of Merit from the National Audubon Society, which shows, we think, that America's energy can be developed even as America's environment is preserved. Conoco, now combined with DuPont for a better energy future.
Some things are too good to keep to yourself, like the JCPenney pre-holiday sale, with savings on motion skirt, the bow blouse, and motion pant. Keep saving on denim jeans for men and flannel shirts, plus 30% off kids' outerwear. For keeping house, these bath towels are 25% off, and save $9 on this electric blanket. The fabulous pre-holiday sale.
Keep it up, JCPenney.
From around the world and from CBS News in Cape Canaveral, Florida, this has been the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather and Bob Schieffer in our newsroom in New York. This is CBS.
Police have arrested a suspect in last week's murder of a mother of 3 young children. That story and a lot more on the layoffs at the Ford glass plant coming up next on Eyewitness News.
See this home? If you wait to buy, it could cost you thousands more in just a couple of years. High interest rates and inflation have prevented many families from saving the required down payments, or made it impossible for them to afford the monthly carrying costs of home ownership. Partners has a solution. Partners co-ownership plans could solve both of these problems.